Hello, my name is Achim Steiner. I'm the Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme, and it is my pleasure today to introduce to you the module of the Global Compact on environment. Over the last decades, the world has developed an impressive body of international environmental law that very often has found its translation and application in terms of domestic and national legislation in virtually every country on the planet. The evolution of environmental legislation and laws that govern our conduct, whether as citizens or as entrepreneurs or public entities vis-à-vis the challenge of environmental sustainability, has taken an ever more dramatic and important role on in our societies. At the beginning of the 21st century, with 7 billion people on the planet, an ecological footprint that we know is not sustainable, challenges in terms of climate change and pollution of the atmosphere, but also loss of biodiversity, the prospect of shortages in terms of supply chains for natural resources, water scarcity, the depletion of fish stocks in the world's oceans, clearly points to the fact that legislating our economic conduct as a collective is becoming ever more important. Your role as lawyers and corporate counsels is often to try and advise your businesses and your CEOs in terms of what impact environmental legislation will have on the future of your business. Unfortunately, in the last decades, we have often found ourselves in a situation where business interests, often defined in terms of a short-term horizon, have sometimes advocated against some of this emerging body of environmental law. I think as we move into the 21st century, it is becoming increasingly clear that environmental legislation, while requiring businesses to adjust, to change, to perhaps sometimes phase out substances, introduce new technologies, accept emission standards, is a challenge in terms of a business strategy. Viewed in overall terms, it has actually driven a remarkable set of developments, be it in terms of the introduction of new technologies, greater efficiency in resource management, less legal liability in terms of damage, and above all, trying to promote a transition towards a green economy, as we called it in UNEP, at the beginning of the 21st century. In the Global Compact, there are 3 principles that are particularly relevant to the kind of work that we do in the UN system with you as representatives from business, but I believe they also are very much part of your work today as corporate counsels and as lawyers. Principle 7, which refers to the precautionary principle, has become a defining element in the way that our societies view today the responsibility that is attributable both to regulators but also to investors, to entrepreneurs and to businesses in trying to address the responsibility that comes along with having business opportunities and markets, but also the introduction of substances such as chemical compounds or new technologies in terms of their long-term impact on human health and our environment. Principle 8 calls upon businesses to play a key role in bringing environmental sustainability into our societies as part of the overall corporate strategy. And Principle 9 in particular calls also for the diffusion of environmentally efficient and clean technologies. These are just 3 principles that point to the broader agenda that we are trying to address collectively from a national and international perspective as public policy makers, but ultimately relying on the ability, the willingness and the support of the private sector, of corporations, of investors, and ultimately our citizens to support an environmental regime in terms of laws, regulations, norms and standards that will allow us to come closer to the objective of assuring sustainable development. As corporate counsels, as lawyers, I believe you have a tremendous role in interpreting that transition from an economy that treated the planet really more as a mining operation for much of the last 200 years to one where our economic activity must also have as its responsibility the foundation for future generations to be able to survive and live well on this planet. I hope that through this module and the work that you will do in the course of your engagement with the Global Compact and other parts of the United Nations system, you will find both interesting ideas, solutions and directions that will assist you in your work. Thank you very much for participating.
Hello, I'm John Sherman, and I'm General Counsel and Senior Advisor to SHIFT. SHIFT is an independent, nonprofit organization dedicated to implementing the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, which the UN Human Rights Council unanimously endorsed in 2011. Professor John Ruggie, who authored the Guiding Principles, is chairman of SHIFT's board, and I was a member of his UN mandate team and helped him draft the Guiding Principles. I'm also a former co-chair of the IBA CSR Committee. The Global Compact's 3 environmental principles, which you've heard Achim Steiner describe, strongly support the Global Compact's human rights principles. A healthy environment, which includes sustainable access to water, is essential to the enjoyment of fundamental human rights, such as the rights to life, health, and safety. In fact, many human rights controversies and lawsuits have had their origin in community protests of environmental pollution by companies. Therefore, the environmental principles are highly relevant to lawyers from a risk management and a compliance perspective. Now today, we're going to hear from 3 distinguished persons, 1 from government and 2 from business, each of whom has had extensive and deep experience in environmental impact and the law. The first is Brice Lalonde, Executive Coordinator of the Rio+20 UN Conference on Sustainable Development. The second is Samuel Meni Kalaparakal, the top lawyer at Infosys, based in India, which is one of the world's leading information technology companies. And the third is Jeannie Lekananye, the legal team manager for Eskom Holdings, based in South Africa, which is one of the world's largest electric utility companies. Brice Lalonde was the executive coordinator of the Rio+20 UN Conference on Sustainable Development and a former French ambassador for climate change negotiations. Between 1988 and 1992, he was French Minister for the Environment. He's also served as senior advisor on the environment to the French government and was director of the Paris office of the Institute for a European Environmental Policy. He's chaired the OECD's Sustainable Development Roundtable, and he's had extensive experience in identifying and addressing environmental issues from both business and policy perspectives. We'll start by asking Brice to discuss the key principles of international environmental law and the environmental principles of the Global Compact. Brice, can you describe the current status of international environmental law and the environmental principles of the Global Compact, and then explain how they apply to business?
Well, the international environmental law is a work in progress, and it's improving every day, and there's more and more conventions, more and more regional, global conventions, and roughly you must not harm the environment of people and countries which are beyond your border. So unfortunately, you're allowed to do what you want in your own country, except, I mean, for the internal national laws. But you should not harm, you must not harm any other country, nor must you transgress any international convention which your country has subscribed to. And of course, international environmental law has not all the enforcement which probably we would like to see, but it's getting more and more important. And it's specifically important in unions like, like the European Union. And if companies do not know about it, especially the differences between, I would say, big regional unions with the United States, Europe, and other countries, they can fall in traps, which would be a big problem for them. So I think you would see for the companies 2 main areas. One, they have to respect the law, of course, international conventions, law, but also they have to be proactive, because this domain is moving all the time, progressing, moving, and it's very important, I think, that companies understand the basics: precautionary principle, transparency, accountability. I think the main feature is responsibility. Each company is responsible for what it's doing, for the harm it can inflict to the environment or to people or to the health. And each company not only has this responsibility, but it has something which is much more important. It's called the license to operate. I mean, it's a moral obligation. If a company does something bad, especially nowadays with the internet, with the reputation can go so fast, everybody knows about it in the world in 24 hours. The company can lose its license to operate and disappear completely. So it really is a very important piece, I would say, of moral and legal obligation which is growing every day faster and stronger.
Thanks. You described the adverse consequences to business of not meeting their environmental responsibility. Can you describe the benefits to business of meeting this responsibility?
Well, we are slowly moving in a world where the environment is becoming more and more important. It's with us forever now. I mean, it's a new chapter of human history. And of course, it's going to get more and more stringent, more and more important. It's resource efficiency. It's the polluter-payer principle, which is becoming more and more implemented. And so the companies who are going faster than the others are going to have a competitive advantage on the others. So it's probably becoming more and more important for companies, as I said, not only to respect all the conventions and national laws, which, national laws implement international conventions. So there is that move, that relationship between national obligations and national laws and international conventions. So not only must they respect these laws, but they have to be proactive, as I really believe. Each company should try to understand what's going to be the next step, must have its vision, its strategy, must work with its suppliers, must have its checklist on all the environmental, I would say, points, waste, energy, water, etc., and move faster than the others. And it seems to me that today, the companies which are the most environmental friendly and responsible are gaining a competitive advantage on the others.
Can you give us some examples of how businesses have benefited from such a proactive approach towards meeting their environmental responsibility?
Now we're having more and more labels, I would say, and code of conducts in the area of business. And consumers now give preference to these companies who have this label. I was particularly, thrilled to hear that a few days ago there was a number of companies with the Global Compact which have invented the label WindMade, by which they guarantee that 25% at least of the energy they use comes from the wind. So this sort of idea shows that these companies know they will benefit from this approach. They know they will benefit from this communication which relates to something true. So, there's lots of examples, and especially, in Europe, which I know better than the United States, lots of companies have improved their bottom line by using organic products or by explaining how the product is environmental friendly. You can see that in the car industry, for instance. You can see that in the food industry. And now more and more companies are using that knowledge also in building houses which are better insulated, etc. So I see that trend in all business, I would say, right now. Less energy, first you spend less money, of course. Savings, environmental friendly products, and most companies now, they sort of advertise, they say, our processes are environmental friendly, etc., etc. So you would give a lot of examples. I think the only still difficult areas, concern extractive industries or fossil fuels industries, where it's more difficult, of course. But even in those areas, these companies are making quite a lot of efforts.
Please tell us who regulates the environmental responsibilities of business.
Well, you have some international conventions which, especially if they are translated into national laws, can bring you to litigation, to court. Look at the Basel Convention. You're not allowed to export, I would say, your waste to developing countries, etc. If you do so, you can be translated, you go to court, and you're condemned. So, yes, there are bodies now in conventions or in national law, national jurisdiction, when they implement international conventions, where a company can be brought to. I know quite a lot of examples, for instance, of some companies which have sold an old factory without taking care of cleaning the ground. They are condemned. They have to clean the ground before they sell, etc. Lots of environmental liabilities now are getting, more and more sanctioned, I would say. So there's lots of examples where, yes, justice is there to keep the environment as protected as possible.
Do you see this area expanding in the future?
For sure. For sure. I mean, you know, you have these, the whole of the society wants it to be implemented. And not only that, but as I said, I believe that the next era of the economy is going to be green economy. It's going to be the environmental friendly economy. And we are going to invest in natural capital. We're going to invest in natural ecological infrastructure, rivers, etc. So yes, the economy is going that way. Of course, we have some moments where now we have an economic crisis, so it's more difficult to invest. But a lot of people believe that even to answer to this crisis, the environmental economy will be the answer, the long-term answer to the crisis. Invest in that, you'll get the green jobs, you'll get the new economy of the 21st century. So yes, it's going to get bigger and bigger, more and more important, and the front runners will be the winners.
Looking to the future, what do you think will be the most relevant environmental law issues for business?
Well, you have the resource efficiency. So the better you manage the resources, especially the scarce resources or the limited resources like water, for instance, it's going to become more and more important. We're going to have major problems with the oceans and the fishery. So aquaculture as a new, bigger and bigger business area is going to become more and more important. The new food, so food is sort of passing from a sort of an old-fashioned thing to a very modern cutting-edge technologies. So food, the new sustainable intensification of food is going to become more and more important. Lots of people are going to live in cities and sustainable cities. You know, lots of cities of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people are going to be created in Africa, millions in China and India. And these new cities, new services, how do you transport, how do you build, how do you live in cities, this is going to become very important. I am not, I cannot read in the future, but obviously we see these trends which are become more and more important, and we have to address them. So the companies who are going to start that are going to be winners with renewable energy and energy efficiency. In the next years, renewables are going to become more and more important, and we cannot afford to waste so much energy as we've done in different countries. So all companies which can help people to do that, help people to behave better, help people to save energy, help people to transport themselves with a smaller footprint. All these services and products are going to be, I think, more and more important. There is, in the next years, and we can see that already, is sort of a trend in the way people use their time. And in a small planet, we can see now more and more people on the internet, or more and more people working on communication, information. And I suppose a few years ago it was people staying 3 hours in front of the TV. You know, now it's 3 hours in front of the computer. But it means that slowly more and more people are using time instead of consuming, I would say, which, taking a piece of earth resource and putting it after as a waste. Instead of doing that, more and more communication, relationship, inter-individual relationship, social media work, more and more relationship. And I wonder if there is not there sort of a trend of our societies to be more, to communicate more, to be more relation and human-oriented than product-oriented. See what I mean? Than consuming-oriented. And there is we have to invent the new infinity, which is relations. Human relations are infinite. Well, the earth resources are not infinite. Okay, so let's go to where things are infinite and get a bit away of where things are scarce or where we're going to have difficulties.
Thank you very much, Brice. Our next guest is Samuel Mani Kalapurakal. Sam is the head of legal at Infosys Technologies, which is an Indian-based leader of next-generation IT. Infosys has a global presence that spans more than 30 countries. It provides consulting and IT services that are focused on developing innovative technology solutions. Infosys has been a UN Global Compact participant since 2001, and it has adopted the Global Reporting Initiative's framework for sustainability reporting. It has recently been awarded the EVI Green Business Leadership Award, the ITSAP Green IT Company of the Year Award, and the National Award for Excellence in Energy Management. Sam, to start with, what are the key values that underpin Infosys's commitment to environmentally sustainable practices?
When the company was set up, one of the key tenets on which the company was set up is that the company would seek respect in all that it does. If you look at respect, we talk about respect from our customers, respect from our employees, respect from society at large, respect from the government of the land. It also includes respect for the environment. So this concept of respect that flows through all that Infosys does is sort of the key underpinning which sort of drives everything we do, including our environmental awareness. I also believe that being environmentally conscious and being environmentally aware and supportive of good environmental practices makes eminent business sense. It is something that you cannot ignore. We live in a planet with finite resources, and if we stress the planet out beyond a certain level, you impact your business. So therefore, being environmentally conscious and practicing environmentally sound techniques is not just a sort of good thing to do. It's business. It's sound business as well.
Thanks. Could you now elaborate on the particular environmental challenges facing the IT industry and how Infosys tries to meet them?
When we look at our business, we're in the IT services business. The challenges that IT services faces is somewhat different from what the traditional information technology business, or say, if you take a hardware manufacturer, they have very different challenges from what we have. One area where we see traditional businesses, traditional IT businesses, say if you take a product company like Microsoft or Google, which produces a product, and services companies such as Infosys, one of the areas where we're seeing a convergence is around the enormous amount of power that is consumed in running all of our operations. Without electricity, information technology and electricity are inextricably linked, and without power, nothing can work. We consume much more power today than we did a few years ago, and almost all of that is due to the fact that we're using more and more powerful computers. So therefore, being environmentally sound, or sort of, let me put it this way, being energy efficient is a key challenge before any business, especially businesses in the IT space. The other area where I think we as a company have a big role to play is we're a very people-intensive business, and people leave a lot of when you have large groups of people, they leave their mark on the environment in very different ways. Everything from transport, getting to and from the office, to actually while you're in the office, consumption of power, water, waste materials that are generated. All of these are key challenges that we need to manage. We're 145,000 employees. We operate almost 28 million square feet of built-up area. So that is a huge amount of space. We consume a lot of natural resources, and we also consume a lot of building resources. Being environmentally conscious and being energy efficient has great advantages from an operating cost perspective for us. For example, if our air conditioning is efficient, you cut your power bills tremendously, using smart meters, for example, encouraging the use of natural light, radiant cooling. These are all techniques whereby we can cut our impact on the resources we consume. So essentially, ours is a business where on an individual unit level, we probably don't have as high an impact as manufacturing does, but on an aggregated basis, because of the huge numbers of people we have, we have a tremendous impact on the environment. IT services companies produce a lot of knock-on effects, mostly for the benefit of people. We generate a lot more employment, things like that. But it also means that a lot more people are visiting our campuses. Typically, we have large, high-density campuses because we need to put a lot of people in relative proximity to each other. That means that all the work that needs to be done to get people to these places is a thing. There's a lot of vehicular transport. So therefore, if you look at Infosys, we've worked quite closely with local governments and with the Highways Authority and people like that to improve access to public transport. It's a key way of maximizing limited resources.
Infosys is a Global Compact member and reports according to the GRI guidelines. What are the challenges and the benefits associated with Infosys's commitment to meet these initiatives?
Traditionally, Infosys has prided itself on being benchmarking itself against the best the world has to offer. Therefore, things like the Global Compact are a key way of measuring measuring our commitment to environmentally sustainable practices in a way that everybody can understand. When you measure yourself against a global standard, it's a clean metric, right? Everybody does the same thing. It's like doing CMM level 5 for our programming. It's a clean measure. Everybody understands what it means, so therefore there's no confusion. When you have that sort of certainty, people who use, say a customer who uses environmental impact as an evaluation criteria on whom they will give business to, it's a straight away, it's a tick. You don't have to go out of your way because you have to do a custom audit, for example. The challenge with doing something like this is actually, if you look at certification and compliance with one of these global programs, getting to being compliant actually is interesting because everybody's focused on getting there. So it's a big challenge and everybody drives towards that change. But I know from experience that maintaining standards is a very, very tough job, especially when it's, you get lost in the day-to-day grind of your job.
Now, turning to the legal department, what do you see as its role in managing these commitments?
At Infosys, legal is sort of a key corporate function. We benchmarked ourselves, like in every other form. Management benchmarked itself on key corporate functions against the best that the world has to offer. We have the advantage of working with some of the top companies in the world and seeing how they function. So obviously legal continues to be a large part at most of our clients. The legal department itself at Infosys we act as a sort of extension of the conscience of the company. We're also a key way of whereby the company measures and limits its risks. So obviously one of the ways I manage it is by sort of letting people know that failure to comply has a price, and that price is not worth paying. So that's one thing. But I also look at myself as a facilitator. I keep in touch with all the global trends that are out there. The environment is something that I personally am quite passionate about, and therefore I keep myself informed of what is best practice, and when it's necessary, I provide those inputs to management to form part of management decision making.
That was an internal view. But looking externally, how do you think legal departments in IT companies can proactively support their business in proactively addressing the environmental challenges and pursuing opportunities for sustainable development?
Legal departments across the world are viewed as being enablers for business. Okay, so if you're an enabler and a business partner, it's important that you keep yourself informed of what is changing. It's one thing, obviously it's part of the job to keep yourself informed of changes in the law, but it's also very important for lawyers to look over and beyond the law, to look at what's happening, what are key influencer groups doing. And because a lot of what in-house counsels do has a bearing on how a company conducts itself. In-house counsels have the ear of management, and their ability to influence management thinking is much higher than a lot of line functions. So therefore, a good in-house legal department or a good in-house counsel who knows what his or her company's interests are, and who understands what the environmental challenges are today and what they're likely to be, can actually be a very important sort of proactive force within a corporate environment.
Thank you very much, Sam. Our third and final guest is Jeannie Lekananye. She's the legal team manager at Eskom Holdings, which is one of the world's top 20 utility companies. Eskom generates nearly all of the electricity used in South Africa and almost half of the electricity used across Africa as a whole. Eskom Holdings is also a member of the UN Global Compact. Jeannie, to begin with, what do you believe to be the most significant environmental challenges that confront the utilities sector?
Eskom's business is interconnected with the environment, and at the same time, the livelihoods of all South Africans is dependent on the same environment. As a result, Eskom needs to demonstrate leadership by acting proactively and responsibly in respect of its duty of environmental care. The generation of electricity using coal has a multifaceted impact. Firstly, by consuming the coal, the resource is depleted. During the 2011 financial year, Eskom's consumption of coal resulted in more than half of the estimated South African coal production. Secondly, by using coal to generate electricity, this requires a significant amount of water, a scarce and very important resource in South Africa. During 2011 financial year, Eskom's use of coal to generate electricity makes it responsible for about 2 to 3% of the annual consumption of freshwater supply in South Africa.
Thank you. Please describe the key steps that Eskom Holdings has taken to address its environmental footprint.
Over the coming years, Eskom intends addressing this problem through dry cooling technology, which will significantly reduce its relative water consumption per unit of electricity produced by as much as 90% compared to wet cooling technology. Through these measures, Eskom aims to bring down the consumption of water per unit of electricity produced by 2030 by approximately 26%. Eskom has revised its climate change response strategy, which now includes 6 points, 6-step approach to creating a greener energy company. The points include adaptability to climate change, power generation diversification, also innovation, energy efficiency measures throughout Eskom facilities, investment through carbon markets, as well as progress through advocacy, partnerships, and collaborations. Other initiatives that Eskom has undertaken include the 49M campaign in South Africa, aimed to make the public aware of energy efficiency and also to encourage energy efficiency. Also, Eskom has signed and endorsed the principles of the CEO Water Mandate, and it has also become a member of the LEAD.
Eskom Holdings has developed its own Sustainability Performance Index, which includes performance indicators relating to environmental legal compliance issues. Could you describe the involvement of the legal team in developing these indicators and in assessing Eskom's environmental performance?
The Eskom Sustainability Index was developed with a purpose to provide Eskom with an overarching view over the long-term sustainability status of the company, through the use of appropriate indicators drawn from different indices within the organization. The index addresses economic, environmental, financial, social, and technical aspects of the organization and provides a score from a holistic perspective. It's therefore used to determine Eskom's long-term sustainability status. As you've stated, it includes environmental legal compliance. A legal advisor is a permanent member of the committee that is responsible for, among others, the Sustainability Performance Index. The role of the legal advisor is to give input into the committee to ensure that legal requirements are well understood, that internal policy is put in place to guide the organization, and also that the indicators that are included in the index are capable of implementation and drive compliance. And also that the company is ready to respond to new legislative requirements and that contraventions are analyzed, addressed, and the company learns from them. And finally, the legal advisor also acts as a proactive sounding board to the members of the committee, environmental managers, and environmental practitioners.
Eskom Holdings has put in place agreements for joint initiatives to improve water management practices with a number of bodies, including coal mining houses, the Department of Water Affairs, and the Water Research Commission. Tell us what the role of the legal team was in that process.
Eskom strives for continued improvement in water use as a strategic water user in South Africa. One mechanism to achieve this was through the participation in some initiatives, such as the water conservation and water demand management, which Eskom started in 2009 with the South African Department of Water Affairs. And the other initiative is the United Nations Global Compact CEO Water Mandate, which was signed in 2010. The water conservation and water demand management seeks to improve and promote the efficient and effective water use in power stations. The United Nations CEO Water Mandate is a non-binding, voluntary private-public initiative of the United Nations Global Compact, and it aims to provide platforms to participants such as Eskom to develop strategies and solutions that can contribute positively to the emerging global water crisis. In addition, Eskom has entered into joint initiative agreements with coal mines to identify opportunities for joint collaboration for solutions to mine water management, such as mine water treatment and recovery. The legal team assists in the formulation of agreements to ensure environmental protection, adherence to the law, as well as other agreements with other entities such as the United Nations Global Compact, and also to internal policies.
Thanks for that. With respect to Eskom Holdings' environmental performance, could you describe the ways in which Eskom Holdings seeks alignment between its own expectations and those of government and other stakeholders, and then discuss why this is necessary to ensure Eskom's sustainability?
Eskom has undertaken a study called the Eskom Factor, which is a collective term to explain Eskom's footprint in South Africa, which has been quantified through a comprehensive assessment of the company's economic, social, and environmental impact on the country, both positive and negative. The assessment is based on the renowned measuring impact methodology that was developed by the World Business Council Sustainable Development, which has been applied here within Eskom-specific context as a vertically integrated state-owned utility operating in South Africa.
Finally, Jeannie, could you discuss the ways in which Eskom hopes to contribute more broadly to addressing development challenges in South Africa by taking a proactive approach to managing its environmental impacts?
Through the daily activities of providing electricity, building power stations and transmission infrastructure, connecting households without access to electricity, or engaging in corporate social initiatives, Eskom has had a significant impact on South Africa and the lives of most people in the country, and it contributes to shaping the future of South Africa and the region.
Thank you very much, Jeannie. This concludes our module on the UN Global Compact Principles on the Environment and why they matter to lawyers, particularly those who advise businesses on legal risk management and compliance. We hope you found this module useful, and you can find further information on this topic at the sources listed now.